Mic check. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To all my Muslims out there now, I'm gonna get right into this because as we seen last time, uh, hold on, I'm having some technical difficulties. What's going on? One of these plugs is acting crazy. I don't know what that was about, but let me try to hurry up. Now, Uh, last time spent time. I had my camera running, everything set up, and then I ended up making a thumbnail, and my camera ended up dying before I can complete the video. So I'm going to try to speed up a little bit because, of course, I did the same thing today. I wasn't expecting on streaming today, but wife a little mad at me right now. Ain't banging with me, so I got a little bit of extra time to do some things. So that's what I'm gonna do. The thing today is another Marc Hill video, right? Now, the reason I am choosing to do this video again is because Mark is older than me, but we kind of similar in the sense that I'm not really on social media like that. I'm trying it, it's new, but I got like very old school values, and I didn't get on social media until uh, like a year before MySpace died, right? Went to college, had a Facebook, but never really used it. I was just a real world type person. I wanted to do everything in the real world. And I remember one time I was at this bowling party, and I had just got on social media, and I had I'm the type of dude, just before my Islam was foundation in my life, I had seen this chick, man. She was tight. Me being player that I am, took her to a condo, prior to, it's like, no, but I seen her in a joint. I'm like, dang, she look familiar, right? Now, because I'm not a social media dude, I'm not thinking that I recognize her from social media. So, boom, I'm right at her. Pull up on her, start to, and she like, oh, she asked me about my social, like, what's your name on Facebook, on MySpace? I'm like, I don't got a MySpace. What's your name on? Now, my man was already heavy into the social media. He could recognize a chick and go right to her page, right? He turned out already. She like, asked me, what's your Facebook? I don't got it. What's your, I had one, but I ain't, you know what I'm saying? I didn't really use it. So, she like, what's your MySpace? I'm like, I ain't on MySpace. So she like, oh, you weird. I'm like, what? I mean, I like that. Clean it up, da 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 da. So, I'm still, da da da. To me, I'm him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't. That's for the kids. I'm grown. So, but that's what she was into. She didn't want to deal with nobody that, didn't recognize her fame because she was popping on social media, and I ain't know. So, I'm starting to pick up a vibe. So I'm like, I'm off her. My man recognized it immediately. Oh, that's such and such. Da da da. Start breaking it down. I'm like, oh yeah, she was acting like she was somebody. Like, so I'm cool. So I want to, she was out there. I would start seeing her around. My man started seeing her around. Come to find out, she was sweet for the B. Everybody was everybody. She was everybody chick, right? So, I say all that to say, I'm not really a social media dude still to this day. So a lot of stuff that be going on and going, I don't see it unless it go really, really, really viral, right? And I had been on. I'm into TikTok now, and I have been on a Boogie page, who is pro Palestine movement. She like one of the top people that I know in the pro Palestine movement on the TikTok, and they was talking about a couple other people, not just her. It was two other women that I know that's pro Palestine, was talking about this person who kind of popped up out of nowhere. Black person, was real pro Israel, came out of nowhere basically, and nobody knew who he was, but he was like going hard. He seemed to have like the back in mainstream media, and anybody like trying to figure it out. And how did he get like this, right? He was like Candace Owens 2.0 before she converted to um sensibility, right? So long story short, Marc Lamont Hill had ended up debating this dude, and I'm starting to look him up, and that's what popped in my mind. Like, oh, this must have been who A Boogie was talking about, because I'm looking at only everything that I could find about him is from Jewish Journal and Prager U. This gotta be him. Check, I found him, right? Now this is only found him because Marc Lamont Hill was interviewing him, and I wanted to see if I was interested in watching this interview. So seeing who this is from a brief research, I definitely want to see what he's talking about, right? So that's what I'm gonna react to today. Yeah, I hope y'all stick with me on this one, and I'm probably gonna be moving a little fast because yeah, I told y'all why. So let me get this all pulled up, and we gonna get to it. Now I only listened to the beginning, and that's how I knew
Videos are
Mark Lamont
like
Hill was.
controversial topics, the most
All right,
interesting
here we go.
interesting subjects, the most
What Mark
urgent
Lamont Hill
debates
was
going
talking
on in the
about,
world
right?
today. And tonight is no different. I want to start off though by apologizing. I know last night we did not have a show, which made me very sad. We've had a string of amazing shows, and you all have been showing up and showing out in terms of the viewership, in terms of the support. I am grateful for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I had a family emergency that caused me to have to drive a great distance uh, last early yesterday evening and late into the night, which is why you have a different background tonight as well. But I'm grateful to be back. I'm
Let me
grateful
speed
to
it up.
be on air, and I'm grateful to have a conversation tonight with somebody I've been wanting to talk to for a minute. I uh, bumped into this gentleman online. I saw one of his YouTube videos, or one of his. I'm sorry. So just to be clear, I'm old. So I don't watch
Me
TikTok.
too.
I see the TikTok after it gets to Twitter, or maybe after it gets to Instagram, but it has to be like three
Me
separate
too.
iterations before it gets to me. But that also lets you know just how viral this gentleman is, just how I would argue important his voice has been to a generation of particularly
From what
young
I
black
can tell, he
conservatives.
pretty new.
And since October 7th, a lot of his work that I've seen has dealt with this question of Israel. And so
Mark being he being PC pragmatic, but he also is if you watch his content, or if you know familiar with his work, and you familiar with black people, he being he not being he kind of being kind of petty, because he's saying like all his work kind of since October 7th, but really what he's saying is that he became popular by becoming pro Israel after October 7th. Before that, nobody knew who he was.
I saw something of his, and I was like, I need to talk to him to understand where his mind is and how he's thinking about these things. Let me pull up the clip first so you can see what I saw, and then you may have a sense of why I wanted to talk to him. Check this out.
If you're a woman who owns a business, then you need a virtual assistant. And not just any virtual assistant, you need a doer. Outsource doers train and match virtual assistants.
My bad, y'all. I don't know what I was looking at.
You're black. You should go to Israel and see how racist they are. I went twice, Goofy. Now walk with me. See, y'all are so accustomed to weaponizing fear to keep black people in our place and thinking the way that you want us to think that it blows your mind when you actually hear the truth. I went to Israel during the middle of a war, and I was treated with nothing but love, respect, and appreciation. Matter of fact, I met so many black Israeli Americans who are living there who love every single moment of living in Israel, because the gag is that Israel is one of the most diverse places in the world. They love everybody who's not a musty genocidal terrorist.
Now, you already, if you if you have more than two brain cells, you already know this is cap, right? For number one. But the first thing that come to mind is how can you be conservative? I thought conservatives meant you had conservative values, right? Let's look up conservative real quick. Um let's look up conservative. I'm gonna do it from my phone. I ain't gonna do it on the screen and take up time. It'll be a lot faster if I just go on my phone, pull this up real quick. Conservative. And I mean, of course, I know what conservative mean, but I want to get the politically correct definition for it, right? And conservative is disposed to preserve existing conditions. Conditions. Disposed to preserve existing conditions, institutions, etc., or to restore traditional ones and to limit change, right? Cautiously moderate or appropriately low. Traditional in style or manner, avoiding novelty and showiness, right? Or relating to the conservative party. So maybe that's how he's conservative because he's well relating to the conservative party. Oh, actually, this is a definition that I didn't know of relating to or characteristic of conservative Jews or conservative Judaism. I didn't know that was a thing. This must have just been added to the dictionary after October 7th. You know what I'm saying? This number 5. You know what I mean? That's how powerful them folk could be. You feel me? They get the dictionary changed, man. That's the type of power right there. Shit. Now, yeah, that's a new one. I'm gonna have to. Y'all probably don't even believe this. Let me see if I can put it on the screen real quick. Where my camera at? Let me see. Can y'all see? Number 5. Let's see. I don't know if y'all can see that. Can y'all see that? I don't know. But yeah, number 5. You know what I'm saying? If y'all can see that, probably messed up my focus. But yeah, these lights bright, baby. The lights bright, baby. You know what I mean? Paparazzi catch me in the highway of my high rise. In the lobby of my high rise. I hide behind my shade because the lights blinding my eyes. Remember what I told y'all? I could quote Hove. This old though. This is all before my foundational Islam. All right, so don't judge me. Uh, so I'm gonna continue, man. What I was about to say is I didn't know you could be conservative and be, you know what I'm saying?
Whew. Now that set me off. I said, what is going on here? So I said, let me talk to this guy. Let me understand who he is. Uh, let me understand what he's about. His name is Xavier Durousseau. Did I pronounce
That is
that right?
correct. Yes,
Okay,
you did.
French is one of the languages I don't actually speak. So Xavier Durousseau, who is a young black conservative who has a strong point of view on this. And I said, let me talk to him. I know it's advertised as a debate, and we may end up debating. I'm sure we will.
Let me clarify myself real quick, right? The reason I'm saying that I ain't know you could be and conservative is because it's all about traditional values and fight and change, and we know that one of the points of contention in America today is, people not wanting to cater to, uh, the idea that there are more than two genders and different differences in sexuality and all these different things. So if when I consider somebody conservative, I consider somebody who is very traditional, right? And even though gay people have been around for since the beginning of time, I didn't think that that would be considered a conservative value, but it could be that he just is a part of the conservative party and that he is upholding Judaism. So that's very much fitting when you plug in definition number 5, right?
We'll end up not agreeing, but I prefer to have a conversation. So Xavier, talk to me about this. First of all, how did you enter the space where you wanted to speak about Israel, particularly in defense of Israel?
Yep. Remember I told y'all Marcus being petty? Watch how he just setting himself up for an alley-oop.
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I know we have our disagreements, but you are a legend in the game. So when you reached out to me, it was very humbling. So thank you. So when I started speaking on Israel is actually because last year before October 7th, it was in springtime of 2023. I was asked to go on a trip to Israel with a colleague of mine who does a family vacation there. And the reason, part of why I went is because I just wanted to learn more about what was going on out there. To be honest, I wasn't very versed in Israel. I didn't know much about the history of the conflicts. I didn't really know anything. And just posting myself there, just posting photos saying like, here I am touring Jerusalem. Here I am like looking at these different historical Christian sites. All these people started attacking me online. And I was really thrown off by the fact that people were so mad.
Now, this kind of seems a little bit unbelievable to me that he wouldn't expect that because what's the black actress? It's a black actress that's real popular that went through the same thing. You know what I'm saying? She did the same thing and had the same response, and she's a celebrity, like a high ranking celebrity. So y'all know who I'm talking about. I just can't think of her name. I'll look it up while he finished talking.
Mad at me, sending me like memes of Hitler, like just going out of control with anti-Semitism just because I was there. So then after that, I started speaking out against anti-Semitism because I thought that that was something that was a thing of the past. I thought the majority of people had moved on beyond that hateful prejudice rhetoric. But then when I constantly kept getting hit with it, even though I'm not even Jewish, I started speaking up. So then when October 7th happened, I started hearing a bunch of narratives that didn't align with what I had actually seen in Israel, what I experienced in Israel, as well as within 24 hours of October 7th attacks, it was like the whole media narrative had flipped and people started saying that it was all a hoax, that it never happened, and just everything just kept just a floodgate of propaganda was opened, and I just felt the
What? Did he say that the propaganda said that it never happened? Did I miss that? Let me go back a little bit, y'all, because I need to understand what he just said, and it sounded like
And
he
you speak out
said
on it.
that.
Okay,
It was variants in Israel, as well as within 24 hours of October 7th attacks, it was like the whole media narrative had flipped, and people started saying that it was all a hoax, that it never happened, and just everything just kept just a floodgate of propaganda was opened. And
He's trying to say that the media covered up for Hamas in the beginning.
I just felt the need to speak out on it.
okay, so that helps. That helps. This could actually turn into like an intervention. this this might this might turn into one of those moments. You might end up getting off this line screaming "Free Palestine." Man. That would be a beautiful outcome. Let's start with the response that you got when you went to it.
I just thought about it. Tiffany Haddish. I was when I was thinking about what to type in order to find it. I remember this Tiffany Haddish. So Tiffany Haddish went through the same thing. She hopped on a plane. She started talking about how you know she wanted to go over there and see it for herself and all this. Now, in Tiffany Haddish's defense, you know, being devil's advocate, she actually considered herself Jewish, so it's slightly more understandable. This to me just sound like a bag chase right here, and I'm gonna just keep it blunt.
Israel. If you got anything anti-Semitic said to you, that is awful, I'm sorry that that happened to you. But more importantly, I'm sorry that it happened to our Jewish brothers and sisters. I'm sure one thing we probably agree on is that there's no space or room for anti-Semitism, and that we have to fight.
Now, bad. I keep pausing it. Now, Mark, I don't really agree with a lot of his. Sometimes he leaned real heavy on calling everything anti-Semitic, and you know, I'm of the position that um, I don't know, I ain't gonna say that, but he calls a lot of things that I don't agree is anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitic. He kind of conforms to mainstream ideas of anti-Semitism. So I'm gonna just put that out there as a disclaimer.
Fight it, stop it, call it out. Uh, Full stop. There's just no. I can't think of any good argument for someone saying anything anti-Semitic. I can only think of awful, evil arguments for or explanations for why people do it.
Correct. Prejudice of any sort needs to be shut down.
Using the right weight matters. The body pod lets you easily understand what is the fastest way to reach.
So I guess my question is, why do you think so many people are outraged at, or why do you think so many people are critical of Israel? What do you understand our those of, and I'm one of those people who's critical of Israel. What do you imagine our criticism to be?
I mean, that's a massive range. It depends on who you're talking to and just like their intellect level. There are some people who just hate
Fair.
Jewish people because they hate that there are so many successful Jewish people. There are people who hate Jewish people because they got into an argument with one person they knew that happened to be Jewish. There's people, and then there's people on the other side who have actual issues with the way Israel conducts their government, or they have issues with what's happening in the conflict. So there are criticisms that can be made of Israel. I'm not one of those people who think that if you make any criticism about Israel or their leadership or anything like that, then that makes you by default anti-Semitic. The people who I call anti-Semitic are the ones who are actually rooting for the downfall of Jewish people. There is a
My
difference
bad,
there.
y'all. I didn't
So
even
I'm not
realize that.
going to be hyperbolic with it like some people can be, but I do see, I guess, the range. So because the way that people come at me about it, it's like some people, it's like they're not even worth having a conversation with because they just hate Jewish people because someone on Twitter
Y'all
told them to.
can't even see, boy.
Yeah, I have seen that. And I will be honest, most of the people I've seen who are sort of that
Here
sort of
we go.
rapidly anti-Semitic, I find to be on the right. I find them to be the sort of evangelicals, many of whom are very pro-Israel but still hate Jewish people. And I find that to be one of those weird contradictions that plays out a lot in mainstream politics. But I think you're right. I think there's a range. Again, we agree. We're agreeing so much. I'm happy about this.
So far.
So far, I mean, I'm sure we'll bump into something, but I also like to be intellectually honest when I debate. So I appreciate you doing the same thing and sort of dismissing from the beginning the idea that anybody who criticizes Israel is an anti-Semite, because that would leave us in a really silly place to argue, right? Because then we couldn't agree on even the most basic principles. It would be like me denying that there are anti-Semitic people in the world. You know what I mean? So it would be like, let's not do that.
Right.
I think what I found troubling, and there were a lot of things I found troubling about the things that I saw you post, but I think one of the things I found troubling is the decision to stand in defense of Israel. If I were to, I could probably name 4 other countries that if I said, would you stand in defense of them, you would probably say no, because fundamentally, even if you don't want any harm to happen to those citizens, you would say at the core that you don't stand for the values of that nation. You don't stand for how that nation is structured. You don't believe in what that nation represents. And I would say, cool. And there are certainly a bunch of nations I would say that for too. Israel's not the only place I have critiques of. I think it would be problematic if I isolated Israel, or if I only focused on Israel's problems and not other countries in the world. So I guess what I'm troubled by, and I'd like to hear more about from you, is why you're so passionately in defense of Israel when Israel has such a long record of injustice and inequality to Palestinian people, such a long record of human rights abuses, such a long record of dispossessing the Palestinian people of their land. Why stand with them? I can see saying with no anti-Semitism, but why stand with Israel as a country when it's so profoundly unjust?
So I just disagree with that entire notion. So I'll answer that as two different parts, because first, as to why I stand so firmly with Israel, like my initial reasons, and then on top of that, I'll get into what you're saying with the Palestinians there. So to be honest, my first reason of why I stand with Israel so firmly is me being selfish as an American, because I see how consequential it is. I view Israel as our most consequential, crucial, necessary ally. When it comes to a global stage and who our enemies are, we share a lot of the same enemies as Israel. And when I look at Hamas and their messaging and what's been in their charter since 1988, how they want to kill Jews and Christians worldwide, they have been saying it for decades. And when people tell me who they are, I believe them. That is in their charter. So when I look over at what's happening in the Middle East, let's say hypothetically Hamas is able to wipe out Israel from the river to the sea. It's what they want it to be. If that happens, then you have the entire Middle East where there's no democracy. There's nowhere for us military-wise to base our troops if we do get into some sort of world war. We have now lost all of the resources that Israel provides us as Americans and to our military. So we would be kind of screwed in the world war, because then you would have the entire collective Middle East.
So to say that you stand with Israel because of their allyship with America and the resources that we provide is very disingenuous, because the amount of money that we send Israel doesn't compare to the dates they might send, or olives, or whatever commodity they provide on the agricultural side. Um, Otherwise, I mean, some technology, of course, they are testing a lot of weapons and weapons of mass destruction over there that America is benefiting from. But to use that as a reason why you stand from them is very problematic, and I think it's disingenuous. But I'm gonna let him continue.
East, led by Iran and Qatar, who want to see the fall of all of Western civilization. Then you have Russia, who we have pissed off royally at this point. They want to see us fall as a world power. You have China that is salivating at the thought of taking over Taiwan and also wanting to come back and be the world power. So you have three.
China taking over Taiwan. Taiwan is already is already I don't know the proper word right now. I'm drawing a blank, but the land is already, like, Taiwan don't have. The land already is under Chinese, whatever. I can't even think of the word. But since Iran and Qatar, once the whole world destroyed, you talk about extreme, but
Major enemies. Well, I shouldn't say enemies full blown, but you have three major entities that are ready to come after us. In the event that Israel falls, we are going to then be in a huge.
And to say that the resources that Israel supplied to us is more important than the resources that we get from China is disingenuous. Everything that is in front of you right now, as you watch this, is connected to China, whether it's manufactured there, assembled there, farmed there. Is something, is at a point now where we catch fish in America and we still send it to China to get it packaged just to send it back to sell it to Americans. That's how vital China is to everything, because the elites have sent all of our jobs to foreign countries. You know what I'm saying? This was back in 2008, some 2010 maybe. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, all our jobs are over there. All of the companies have, restructured the legislation in America so that they can maximize profits by using international entities to get cheap labor. And the American economy benefits, but Americans suffer.
Huge disadvantage. So when I look at that, I'm like, okay, as Americans, we need to stand with Israel because Israel is going to have our back, and I'm not trying to be in a war with an entire state of terrorism. Then the other side of that is when it comes to with the Palestinians, I just disagree with that notion.
That's
I
very
don't believe that Israel has
anti-Semitic.
been wronging the Palestinians for all this time. Like I'm sure there are accounts of injustices that happen, just like there's plenty in any other nation that you look at. But for the most part, Israel has a right to exist. In my book, I look at Israel as a beacon of light coming out of the Middle East. And when I went over there, one of the things I wanted to see first is, like I said in that
He got all the talking
video you
points.
played initially, is, are these people
Israel has
racist?
a
Are
right to
they
exist.
against against Arabic people? Is it an apartheid? Is it as segregated as people are trying to say? And I went over there. I've now been there 3 times, and that is just not the case. I go around and I have conversations with Arabic people, and they do not feel the alleged racism that people are constantly
Oh, he
trying to
speak
say.
Arabic?
Black people over there
Really?
do not from the conversations I've had, and I've had many conversations with a lot of people over there, and they just do not feel that way. And they see
Mark
historically
Petty.
the importance of Israel being there and the Jewish people being able to return to that land.
Attention
Oh my goodness. Are you kidding me?
retirees, if you're willing to be at your computer from 9 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. on most weekdays, I can show.
So you said a lot of interesting things and important things there. So let me back up. First, you talked about the Hamas charter. The Hamas charter, certainly the original charter, used the word Jews. Later, Hamas adjusted the charter and made it very clear that they weren't talking about Jews as a religion, that they weren't talking about Jews globally, but that they were talking about Zionists, and particularly the Zionist project, which has been about dispossessing the Palestinian people. You do acknowledge, just as a matter of fact, that the Hamas charter doesn't say Jews anymore. You acknowledge that as a matter of fact, right?
I haven't read their current charter, but I know their original charter did mention Jews and Christians worldwide.
It doesn't say Jews and Christians. It says Jews and Israel. Well, I don't want to quibble about that, but I would ask you to look at the more recent charters. The new charter came in 2017, I believe. So over the last 7 years, that's been different. So I just think as a matter of just speaking out publicly, it's important to speak on that with accuracy.
I view that in the same regard as if the KKK rebranded, I'm still not going to support anything that they're standing for, like as an organization or
Well,
as a group.
I would agree with that. The problem is, it's not. That's not. I would argue that's not analogous. But the question here is, Israel is a Jewish state.
Correct.
Israel, if you live in Israel as a Jewish person, what is your nationality?
Israeli.
No, it's Jewish. It's Jewish. That's
Nationality or like race?
No, nationality. Your nationality in Israel, if you are a Jew,
Ignorance.
if you are a Palestinian and you're a citizen of Israel, your nationality is Arab.
Arab.
So Jewish in the Israeli context isn't about your religious identity. It's also a national identity. And so if a Jewish state whose citizens are Jewish have taken your land and you say, I want to defeat those people, it's not exactly the same as if like the KKK said kill all the Jews. If the KKK says kill the Jews, they're talking about Jewish people. And that's a very specific thing.
Exactly.
In the context of Israel-Palestine, it's a lot more complicated. And that's why in the 2017
It's gonna go over
charter,
his head.
they made it very clear that they were talking about Zionists and that they were talking about people, they were talking about in the context of historic Palestine. So just a historical correction and just for clarity's sake. But there's another point you make here, which is that when you've been to Israel, you didn't see apartheid. What would apartheid look like to you? If it had been apartheid, what would it look like?
If they had an apartheid, there wouldn't be as many Arabic people involved in the government as there are. There are very high-level Arabic and Muslim people that are out there in Israel that are able to have positions of power. In apartheid, it's like you have a second class of people who are lower than the Jews out there. There is not a difference in rights out there based on Jewish people having some sort of supremacy. If anything, there are Islamic people out there who have more privileges, especially when you go.
The fact that he's saying like Arab and Muslim and Islamic people, like you could tell he's very ignorant. He can't even differentiate between the 3 groups. He can't differentiate between Jewish identity being a nationality, an ethnicity, as well as a religion, and he can't differentiate, which is very important when you're going to talk about this this conflict. You have to know the difference. Also, you can't differentiate between an Arab, a Muslim, and it's no such thing as an Islamic person. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is an Islamic? I'm an Islamic person. You know what I'm saying? Mark is an Islamic person. I don't know if he's Muslim, but his degree is in you know, Palestinian history and Islamic studies or something of that nature. So that would make him an Islamic person. You know what I'm saying? Like, an Islamic person shows that you haven't done enough of the work to really be in this space, for number one. But for number two, you can't point out anti-Semitism in people if you can't point it out in yourself.
Go somewhere like Jerusalem, where I went over to the Temple Mount area over in Old City, Jerusalem. And if you are Jewish or if you're not Islamic, you're not allowed to be in a certain area after a certain amount of time. Like they do all these extra things where they go out of their way to make Islamic people that much more comfortable over there and give certain privileges and extra access to Islamic people as a means of compromising. So when I went over there, I'm seeing all these people just mingling, getting along. Like there was no.
So we didn't see all of them storming out Aqsa and putting people in zip ties, and so we ain't see that. And we don't see that every year. We don't see that several times a month, actually.
Sort of racial tension based, again, on the conversations I've had.
Did you see the Arabs in West Jerusalem?
In West Jerusalem?
Yeah.
To be honest, I have no sense of direction, so I couldn't tell you which part of Jerusalem I was in and what part.
Exactly.
There's a green line, right? So in West Jerusalem, you see few or no Arabs, or what you would call Arabs or Palestinians, because they're not allowed there. In East Jerusalem, which is supposed to be Palestinian territory, but that has been illegally occupied by Israel since 1967, yeah, you see control. But it's interesting to hear you say that they're giving something back. They're illegally occupying Jerusalem. It would be like if I were to run into your house, take it over, and say, yeah, but you know what? The den is all yours, Xavier. It's all yours as a compromise.
But
It's
who is
your
saying that
house.
they're illegally occupying Jerusalem? Like, I just disagree with that entire notion, and just factually speaking, that's just not the case. I mean, that is
You disagree with international law. See, that's another thing. You can't be objective. Then you showing your colors. You showing that you've chosen a side, and the facts don't matter.
Israel.
What's the fact? What would be the factual case?
Exactly.
That that country is Israel. That is the state of Israel. That city is Jerusalem. Like, there's not a line of division where
That
Islamic people are not
country
allowed to
is
go there.
Israel.
There
Like,
is.
Israel's a
There is.
state.
There's literally a line. We talk about the Green Line. We talk about the pre-1967 lines. We talk about all kinds of lines around Israel. East Jerusalem is not the same as West Jerusalem. I know you said you don't know direction, which I respect. But
okay, don't take it that literal. But it's like, when you're saying to me, like, which part of
what I'm saying is
Jerusalem
that
are you
it's
on?
what I'm saying
petty,
is,
is
if
but
the international community recognizes West Jerusalem as Israel, the international community does not recognize East Jerusalem as
that stuff
Israel.
matter.
The world says that East Jerusalem is contested. The world says East Jerusalem is under illegal occupation. The only country in the world that doesn't think that basically is Israel.
Paying your bills on time raises your credit score, right? Wrong. In fact, this is one of the 3 major credit score lies you're being told by the big credit companies. Fall for any of these.
I mean, again, when I was there, I didn't hear any sort of people aren't allowed to go somewhere. I'm not hearing anything. The only time I'm hearing that somebody is not allowed to go places, it's Jewish people are not allowed to go to certain areas. I have not seen anything there where Arabs or Islamic people are not allowed to go on a different side of Jerusalem. Like, that has just never been the case. And that's like, people also try to bring up
When
the
you're walking
argument
through
of
the
the
Temple Mount,
quarters
you
of
Three
Jerusalem. The
times,
quarters
and
of
you're saying
Jerusalem
that's never been the case.
are not segregated. It's the same energy as, like, for example, I live in Los Angeles. There's Koreatown where there's a lot of Korean culture. There's places like Little Italy. There's Chinatowns. There's like all these different places where you have a bigger concentration of a certain ethnic group or a certain just demographic in general. But that doesn't mean that you have to stay there. There's no segregation that's happening over there.
Right. So again, just as I know we're going to disagree on some points of fact, but some points of opinion, but as a matter of fact, Jerusalem absolutely is restricted based on where you can go, just like the West Bank is just restricted on where you can go. If you were near the Temple Mount, when you go in the Temple Mount, and as soon as you make a left, if you're coming down Salahuddin Street, you make a left, you see soldiers. Did you see a lot of soldiers?
I mean, I was seeing soldiers everywhere in Jerusalem.
You know why? Because it's under military occupation.
It's not that it's military.
It's not that it's what? There's soldiers there, but it's not that it's what?
Military occupation. Those people are there to keep you protected from terrorists. There's constantly a threat of terrorism when you're in Jerusalem or throughout most of Israel. That's not sometimes. See, people are always trying to demonize these people who are standing there because they have guns. Those people, you can have conversations with them. They're very friendly. Will explain to you why they're there. They're there to keep you safe. They're there to keep the citizens and the tourists protected from terrorism.
Have you found them to be polite and nice to Palestinians, or to you as a tourist?
I mean, I don't know what the conversation that they're having with a Palestinian is. I'm not a Palestinian, but they're nice to Arabic people. I mean, they're there to protect anybody who's not there to cause
You
trouble.
don't even
if a
know what the
Palestinian is
difference
over there,
is
it's not going
between
to cause an issue.
an Arab and a Palestinian. You just said you don't know what conversation they having with the Palestinian, but they nice to Arabic people. Well, which one is it? Because Palestinians are Arabs. Not all Arabs are Palestinian. So are you saying that they nice to Syrians that come there, or they nice to Egyptians that come there? What are you saying? They're nice to Saudi Arabians that come there, but you don't know what they doing with Palestinians. You can't tell the difference. So how do you know? You can't tell the difference between a Palestinian and Arabic people. So how can you say that they not having this conversation? You don't know what the conversation is with Palestinian, but they nice to Arabic people.
I can tell you,
they're not.
So I spent the last 10 years studying Jerusalem, being in Jerusalem, doing field work in Jerusalem. When Palestinians have to pass through Jerusalem, they have to show their ID. They have to walk around with their ID. They have to show it to soldiers in order to pass from one place to the next.
Yeah, they got different
If you show
license
your American
plates and
passport, you don't. And if you show your blue Israeli passport, you may not. But if you have a Hawiyah, you got to do it. If you're a Jerusalemite, and you have what's called like an iqama, or like a permit, or not a permit, but a kind of residency, you absolutely have to show it. So and this is an important conversation for those of you watching, because it seems to me, respectfully, that during your travels, you got to see a lot of Israel, but some of the parts of what make Israel apartheid weren't shown to you. And that's the thing. So like, you walked through Jerusalem and didn't even realize that the Palestinians are being forced to show ID, and the Palestinians can't go where you went. The Palestinians can't go to the other side of Jerusalem. The
Exactly.
Palestinians have to go through checkpoints. The Palestinians can't go to Tel Aviv. You were in Tel Aviv, I'm sure.
Yes, I was in Tel Aviv, but it's the same. I mean, if anything, it's like the Palestinians are able to come over to Israel and they're able to go to these different places. They have to show the ID just because of, I mean, there's obviously been a whole lot of conflict there for a really long time at this point. But when
No,
Jews
no,
are
no.
not
The
allowed to
Palestinians
go
getting
into
no,
Gaza at
no.
all, like you go there, there's these massive signs saying that Jews are not allowed to come past a certain point. So it's, if anything, again, in that entire region, Jews are the ones that aren't allowed to go to certain areas within that region. Palestinians are allowed to come over.
You
No.
don't know the difference,
So
bro.
first, Palestinians in the West Bank aren't allowed to come into Israel. They absolutely are not, unless they have some special permit, which is rarely given. They absolutely
But
do
they're able
not.
to get that permit. Jews are not able to go over into their side at all,
That's not true.
unless they're
That's
a
not true.
part of the military and they're like being taken there,
Yeah.
like they're going and doing some business operation over there or something. But Jews have not been going over there since like 2005.
So let's first talk about these signs you're talking about, because I think that's an important point that you raise. You're talking about signs that look like this, right?
I knew Mark
Yes.
was gonna pull. I
Right.
knew he was
You know
doing
what
that
those
when he
signs are?
looked down. You don't know what
Israel.
that say.
Right. So when you say they're not allowed, you're making it sound. One would hear. I'm not saying you're being misleading, but one would have heard that and thought that you were saying that the Palestinians aren't letting the Jews in. But this is the
This road leads to Area A under the Palestinian Authority. The entrance for Israeli citizens is forbidden, dangerous to your lives. What?
Area A. To be clear, I don't want people to think I'm being misleading here. But these signs to Area A, like this would be like if you're going to Ramallah, for example. That sign
Because
is
if the Jews go over there, they're getting murdered. If they go over on that side, they're going to get murdered, like almost immediately. So
You're-
Israel has made it
but
illegal
that's
for
not
Jews to even
true.
go over there
This
to keep
boy
them
is
protected.
crazy.
That's a measure of protection for the Jewish
So,
community.
so the measure of protecting you from imminent death is a sign that tell you not to go there because it's dangerous. So you got soldiers in the city with guns to protect you from terrorists. But if you leave that area, you got a sign that's going to protect you from imminent death. That's what you're telling me. Come on, man. Come on, man. Who you fooling?
Community, because they know what's going to happen if they go over to Gaza.
So we're talking about two different things. I'm just speaking into Palestinian territory right now. You're talking specifically about Gaza. So let me step back first. In terms of, I'm saying first that initially what you said was that at least Israel lets the Palestinians in. The Palestinians don't let the Jews in, and I'm saying that that's factually untrue. It's Israel that's forbidding its own citizens of travel to these Palestinian areas. Although there is a
That's
reason
why.
for it. That's
And
fine.
what
I
is
just
the
wanted to
reason for
correct the
that?
initial point you made. But to the bigger point you're making, which I think is interesting and important, which is that they get killed whenever they go there. I'm not sure where you're getting that from. Since 2005, Israel he basically took all of its citizens out.
Right.
So on what basis are you saying that Jews are being killed in Gaza?
If they go over there is a very high likelihood that they're going to be attacked and they're
You're
going
saying
to be murdered.
hypothetically.
Yes.
Okay. Hypothetically is important. I can't argue with a hypothetical. When you initially said it, I think the audience may have heard that you were saying like Jews were getting killed over there, so Israel stopped it from happening.
Well,
That
let me
wasn't-
clarify. That is not what I meant.
I know. I'm just clarifying for the audience's benefit because again,
Mhm.
I appreciate you saying that. I think it's important for us to operate in good faith. So
Mhm.
so to this apartheid thing, could it be possible for there to be Arabs on the Knesset, Arabs in the Knesset, Arabs on the Supreme Court, and there still be an apartheid state?
By definition, no.
Could there be racism with a black president?
Systemically, no.
What?
You're saying these things are impossible.
Like by the definition of an apartheid, you cannot be in Congress or not Congress, Knesset, or in their government system if there's an apartheid.
So historically, whenever there's been an apartheid,
So he agreed with the people that say America is no longer a racist country because Barack Obama was president. That tells me enough right there. Now, one of the things that I want to do with this channel is I want to talk about issues that affect the black community, but that are issues that affect us as Muslim. A lot of times we have a lot of content that is, scholarly, for us to learn the religion. We have a lot of content that deals with, things that Arab people are doing in the Arab world that are outside of Islam, but that affect Islam, like the Thinking Muslim podcast, which is, I love that podcast. Blogging Theology, which is very much still Islamic scholarship, but it's more so textual criticism. And he brings in, different Muslims who tackle these secular issues, right? And for my community, I want to do that, but I also want to bring the average person something that is important to their lives because at them as Muslims are being affected by things that are specific to the culture. You know what I'm saying? And one of the things that's specific to our culture as Black people is racism in America. And the last video I did with reacting to Mark content was about allyship and how a lot of times, you know, especially the Free Palestine movement has shown how a lot of people, you know, ride the wave. They want you to, they expect us to help them, and it's no expectation to, you know, return a favor. And they're in it for this cause, and that's it. You know what I'm saying? They want us to operate under the guise that oppression everywhere is oppression anywhere. But for them, as soon as this issue is over, kalas. You know what I'm saying? And even when it comes to like, you know, Sudan, and like I was in Juma the other day, and the Khatib was just talking about, yeah, you know, we gotta stand up for, you know, oppression everywhere, you know, make dua for the people that's in Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria. That's it. That's all. That's the only, you know what I'm saying? And rarely do I hear, and this is mostly Daisy community. Rarely do I ever hear make dua for the people in Rohingya people. Never do I hear dua for the Sudanese or the Congolese or the you know, is it South Africa, or you know, in any of these countries where any type of oppression is happening, whether that's people being murdered like in Congo. You know, we never talk about how the UAE is supporting the rapid support force. We never talk about how, you know, Qatar and UAE are using Ethiopians and Sudanese women as slaves. And, you know, not just them, you know, people in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh as well. But you know, this, when it comes to Ethiopia and Sudan, this is a issue that affect the women. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to other places, it's everybody. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't isolate. You know, I mean, they're using the men for their labor, and mostly the men for their labor. You know what I'm saying? Or it's a labor issue. But when it comes to the slave stuff, a lot of times it's a lot of abuses that we wouldn't expect to find in Islamic countries. You know what I'm saying? So it's things that are embarrassing to the Ummah. And because I want this page to be a form of activism, these are things that I have to talk about. You know what I'm saying? It's embarrassing to Islam, but it doesn't change if we don't talk about it. And I think a lot of times in these other communities, y'all think if we don't talk about racism, oh, the Prophet ﷺ, he already told us that not be racist. But he told us to do a lot of stuff that y'all don't do. He told us to only celebrate the 2 Eids, but y'all out here celebrating birthdays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween. Like, only thing y'all don't celebrate is probably Easter. He told us to do a lot of stuff that y'all still do. So miss me with that. And let's get back to the comment. My content. My bad for going on a tangent.
Like, for example, America was an apartheid state prior to, you'd say, 1965. You'd agree, right?
You could argue that.
Would you argue that? Would you agree with that argument that I'm making?
Yeah, I mean, I would have to look at the Webster's dictionary definition of an apartheid, but yes, essentially, yes, Black people had left.
You're not qualified, bro. You're not if you need a Webster dictionary to understand this, you're not qualified to point out apartheid.
That's right.
Yeah, during Jim Crow. I mean, during Jim Crow, clearly America.
Yes.
Sure. We had a Black senator during Jim Crow.
Black
Did that nullify being apartheid?
I didn't know that there was a Black senator during Jim Crow, but was that in a free state, or was that in a state that already had more of the rights, where it was a separate type of system?
A free state, what do that matter?
Because I mean, because the United States is unique because we have both state and federal laws, so there's like a difference there. So like obviously, like there was a point, if you're going way back like to slavery, there was obviously a point where there were free Black slaves or there were free Black people in states up in the north. There were Black people enslaved in the south, so they had different rights even though they were the same country. So America isn't a good comparison for that.
No, but that's exactly what's happening in Israel. That's the point. That there are people who have different rights even though they're in the same country. That's exactly the point.
But that's not what's happening over there.
So I'm glad you say that.
Just did,
so if we look, in the United States during Jim Crow, there were, for example, and we see that even after Jim Crow, like redlining and things where you couldn't live in black people couldn't live in certain neighborhoods. That would be apartheid.
I mean, it takes time when there's obviously a system that's that backwards for so long, it takes time for that to be undone.
Yeah. No, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm saying during the height of that moment when it was happening, we would say that this is unequal and unjust. I'm saying in Israel, that still happens right now. You know, there's admissions committees in places like the Galilee, where they decide whether you can move in based on whether you meet the social and cultural fabric of the neighborhood. Like literally the same thing that was happening in the United States during Jim Crow.
Oh wow, I didn't even know that.
There are lots of VTNs out
Mark
there
is the
at all
best
different
person
price
to.
points.
Mark is the best person to have this conversation with because he's very. I mean, his degree is
Many of them are even
based
free.
on,
So, should you use a free VPN? In this video,
his
to be quite frank, that aspect is not my business.
PhD.
Like I can only fight.
It is if you say it's not happening.
Like it's not my
if you go out and say
business.
this isn't happening, then it becomes your business. If you don't say anything about it, it's not.
What? It's not your business. But you going on a world tour to go on a propaganda tour to talk about how Israel. Where my button at for this?
Say you meet the social and cultural fabric of the neighborhood. Like literally the same thing that was happening in the United States during Jim Crow.
To be quite frank, that aspect is not my business. Like I can only fight.
It is if you say it's not happening. If you go out and say this isn't happening, then it becomes your business. If you don't say anything about it, it's not your business. But if I say Israel doesn't have apartheid, and then I point out the apartheid, and you go, it's not my business.
There's a difference between having an apartheid and vetting who's able to live
What?
There's vetting to see who is able to live in that neighborhood, I guess, if they're going off of, I don't know, is it financial? Is it based on just like what type of person you are? It's like, I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm an expert on Israel on like every single aspect of it. What I'm saying is when it comes to the bigger picture of what's happening over there, I'm disgusted by what Hamas is doing. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm an expert on Israel on like every single aspect of it. What I'm saying is when it comes to the bigger picture of what's happening over there, I'm disgusted by what Hamas is doing. I'm disgusted by all the terrorism that's happening over there. And
what Hamas doing? He should call him out on that. What is Hamas doing?
And I would love for there to be a solution, but you have only one side of the aisle that's willing to have a solution.
So I'll take the admissions committees off for a minute. I also would encourage you and everyone out there who's watching to go to IDALA's website. IDALA is a wonderful website. I don't know. I suspect you may not have been to their database yet. Most people haven't. Not saying anything about you. I'm not being shady. I'm saying like most people haven't. It's an interesting one. They have. Let me pull it up for you real quick. Because you were saying that the laws aren't different. In their database, they show over 65 Israeli laws that discriminate directly or indirectly against Palestinian citizens. So that would be examples of discrimination and racism. That would be a definition of apartheid. Now, I know you haven't looked at the database, so I'm not asking you to make a claim on this. But if you were to look at those 65 and find out that they are in fact true, would you then acknowledge that there's apartheid in Israel?
See, no, because again, by definition, still, when you're looking at an apartheid, you cannot be. Because are we talking first? If we're being more specific about, are we talking about Arabs in general? Or are we talking about Palestinians? Because the Palestinians have a whole unique situation there. Because so many of the Palestinians there,
almost every Arab in Palestine, almost every Arab in Israel is Palestinian. Every Arab citizen in Israel. I was speaking earlier.
Not necessarily.
No,
what?
Who's not?
Let me run it back.
I mean, there's Arabic people from other Arabic countries.
Citizens
talking about Palestine for
apartheid in Israel.
I want to hear that again.
See, no, because again, by definition, still, when you're looking at an apartheid, you cannot be. Because are we talking first? If we're being more specific about, are we talking about Arabs in general? Or are we talking about Palestinians? Because the Palestinians have a whole unique situation there. Because so many of the Palestinians there,
almost every Arab in Palestine, almost every Arab in Israel is Palestinian. Every Arab citizen in Israel is Palestinian.
Not necessarily.
No, who's not?
I mean, there's Arabic people from other Arabic countries.
Yeah, but I'm talking about citizens of Israel, not from other countries. We're not talking about visitors. I'm not talking about residents. I'm talking about citizens. If I'm a citizen of it, citizens of Israel. We're talking about citizens of Israel. I'm saying
citizens of Israel could be Arabic and not be Palestinian.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying as a matter of fact, if you look at the demographics of Israel, almost all of them are Palestinian. But their nationality is Arab, which goes back to the point I was making. There's Jews, there's Arabs, right, in terms of nationality. But beyond that, what I'm saying to you is there are.
Remember I told y'all that I was going to go over his head? Remember I told y'all that? He don't get it. See how his wheels just turn and he like, what are you talking about? I don't understand. But he won't say it because it looks too bad. And he realized that he shouldn't have took this invitation. And I respect Mark for handling him with the baby gloves, because if he would have went hard on him, then people would have just said, "Oh, well, Mark a scholar, he not." You know what I'm saying? So Mark handled him with the baby gloves, and he allowed him to tie his own, make his own bed, tie his own rope. You put yourself in the air, I'll just kick away the chair.
65 laws in Israel that discriminate against people who are Palestinian directly. I'm saying, you're saying that even if you found out that those laws existed and were discriminatory, you still wouldn't say that Israel's an apartheid state.
See, it's the framing of the question that is strange to me, because you obviously know, like, when it comes to what's happening over there, they have to have some sort of separation as far as what is happening in the Palestinian territories and what is happening in Israel. They have to be that way, because look how many people in the Palestinian territories are supportive of what Hamas is doing. I'm not going, if I'm running a government, why would I sit here and be supportive of people who are leading terrorist
I said
organizations?
discriminatory. We're talking about discriminatory laws. Discriminatory laws. If the laws are discriminatory, why would that be okay? When is unless you're saying there are times where discrimination is okay.
Low key, yes. If it's between allowing people who are also a part of a terrorist group like Hamas to come over and have all these freedoms over in Israel when they're trying to tear down Israel.
Right? These are Israeli citizens.
See, told you, he still don't get it.
So where are you saying that where Israeli citizens are being having their rights taken away? Are you talking about people from Palestinian territories going into Israel? Or are you talking about Arabs living in Israel?
This is what Mark been talking about the whole time. He still don't get it. Palestinians living who are citizens of Israel. When Israel came and took over everything, there are still they're slowly pushing the Palestinians out, and that's why they want to unalive a lot of them, because there's no way they'll be able to just outpopulate them. So you have Palestinians who have yet to be pushed out that are technically Israeli citizens because Israeli own the government and run the government and have usurp the land. But he don't get it. He don't understand. And this is why it's good that Mark used the baby gloves, because he's making a fool of himself, and it's not Mark doing it.
Living in Israel have all the same rights that Jews living in Israel have.
And that's the point he's trying to make. That's wrong. And you saying that even though it's proof, you're not going to change your mind.
Palestinian territories, that is a different situation.
Right. So you're saying Arabs who are citizens of Israel have the same rights as Jewish citizens who live in Israel, correct?
Yes.
And I'm saying that this database shows that there are actually 65 laws that prove that they don't have the same rights.
Well, I would have to look at the database.
Right. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying even if you look at the database and see that they're discriminatory, you're saying you still won't say that Israel's an apartheid state.
Because it's not an apartheid state. Would I be, if I'm saying that there's
a circular argument? You're saying it's not an apartheid state because they don't discriminate. And I say, well, if I show you the discrimination, will you then say it's an apartheid state? You said no. I said, why? You said because it's not an apartheid state.
See, that's different. If let's say what you're saying is correct, because I've not looked at the specific website. If I look at the specific website, and if what you're saying is correct, and it's specifically Arab people living in Israel are being discriminated against, then okay, then that's discrimination. But being having discrimination and being apartheid are not the same thing. If there is discrimination, it would be news to me. I would take a look at it, but it's by definition not an apartheid, because they want to be able to be in power in Israel if it was an apartheid state. They are not second-class citizens.
But what would make somebody what would make someone a second-class citizen if they have different laws, if they can't live in certain neighborhoods, if they can't go to certain schools, if they can't go down certain roads? What would make something an apartheid state then?
Are you saying that those are the rules that they have there? Because Arab citizens of Israel, I feel like that would be news to them if they were being told that there's this list of places and things that they can't do simply because they're Arab.
No, bro, it's news to you, nigga. You talk about that would be news to them. No, they know they have to abide by those rules. They know which streets not to go down. They grew up there. They know why they can't go down these streets. They grew up there. Like, do you not know this been going on for like almost 80 years? Like, what are you talking about?
That's just not the case.
I mean, I don't know. I spent a lot of time there, and I talked to lots of Palestinians who often talk about that. So I don't think they'd be as surprised as you do. Let me ask you a question. Your 3 trips, who sponsored them?
We already know.
I bought my own flight the second time. I bought my own flight the first 2 times, and the second time or the third time I went, it was
look at him making it up.
Called. It was like a trip where they were just sent.
Yeah.
No, because I actually want to remember the name for you.
Was it APAC?
No, I've never worked with APAC. if I wish
Look, he
let me
about to
just
go
say
off
this.
on a
I
tangent
wish
because he
the
don't want to
money
answer
that
the
people
question.
swear APAC is giving me, I wish they did. I wish they gave me a check because I would cash it
Oh, I know you
today.
would.
Shoot, child, I would cash that check so fast. But no, I've never worked with APAC. It's like a small group. It's not.
It's called.
You're not a child. You're a man.
Come on, bro. It's called. I know it. It's a joint they send. You got one that send people there for they write a passage, and then it's not small. Don't try to. Okay, it's like foods. I don't want these joints to play during my stream because I don't know how that works with strikes and all that. So I mean, even though I'm not monetized, I ain't monetized. This shit matter, right?
Man, so
Right,
stop
y'all?
wearing so many
Let me
layers
know.
to go outside and get the Bearskin Tactical Hoodie 4.0.
These commercials, man, they
It's
be
I think
getting me.
it's
I be ready to
AJC.
pull out my wallet.
I think it's AJC was the group that sponsored a trip that I went on. And the reason that I went was because I was friends with one of the people that was leading a group of people going out there who wanted to tour Israel. So me being just transparent about it, they sponsored that trip. But again, I don't understand why that is always a question. Like whether I buy my own flight or someone else buys the
Well, I
flight.
don't care
I don't
about the
understand
flight.
why that's such a weird question.
I don't think it's a weird question. I think again, as someone who spends a lot of time there, or who used to, I don't go anymore. But as someone who used to spend time there, used to research there,
He can't,
the person who organizes the trip, I don't care who pays for it as much as who sponsors the trip, in the sense of like who takes you places, who shows you things.
They have
I don't care whether you're
opportunities.
on my side of the aisle, whether you're on your side of the aisle. When people take people on delegations, I've led delegations to Palestine. We show people things that we think are important for them to see,
Right.
and we don't show them other things.
Right.
Sometimes intentionally, sometimes because of time. But it's always important to know who's shaping the trip. I don't think that that's an unreasonable question, particularly if you're coming back with sort of talking points and arguments that are from a particular ideological position. People are going to say, well, who brought you there? So like when you went the first time, you paid for your own flight, but like who took you around?
I hired a tour guide. The first time I went there on vacation. The first time I went there was June of last year after I was invited to go with a colleague. So I was there just on vacation. I hit up some tour guides. I work at PragerU, so a lot of them were familiar with PragerU. So like, okay, we'll take you around. So I went there. I met friends who were there. The second time I went there, and the second and the third time I went, technically all three times I went there, I did a lot of exploration.
Do work at PragerU. PragerU, the company that did a documentary style cartoon that explains why slavery was not a thing. It didn't exist. Is that the one? Is that the PragerU? Didn't they say, I think they said slavery didn't exist. Let's look that up. Let's look that up. What did PragerU? Let's see here. PragerU videos teach Florida students that slavery wasn't so bad. I think this is part of the whole propaganda to teach that slavery left those black folks with skills that they were able to use and pull themselves up by the bootstraps after slavery. It was very beneficial for those black folks. They got the Christopher Columbus with the blind hair, blue eyes popping. Yeah, they do cartoons that is anti-slavery propaganda. And that's the company he worked for. It says a lot.
On my own too. Like I wasn't on a tour the entirety of me being there.
No,
So
you
I was
were,
going
because you can't just
all
roam
around, walking
You don't
around,
speak
talking
the
to people, having
language.
conversations.
You can't just roam around Israel on your own. Cut it out. You don't speak the language. You are tourist. You're on a tourist visa. It's a lot of it is it's a lot of military zones that you just aren't allowed to go to. Yeah, come on. Come on. That's not how it worked, bro. Especially you just said I have bad directions. Well, how many times did you get lost?
So it wasn't just a structured trip by a group. painting a certain narrative. Like, this isn't like visiting North Korea where they don't want me to see the people starving.
No, I get that. Did you go to so first, just so for those who don't know, PragerU is a conservative institution that identifies as an institution committed to advancing Judeo-Christian values. So a tour guide who is familiar with it
that's
and
what
has a
that's about.
relationship to PragerU is going to have a particular ideological position toward Israel. Just
They
like
didn't have a relationship with PragerU. They just were familiar with our work.
okay,
Because
if
Dennis
I
Prager
were
is obviously very popular in Israel.
that's fair. If I were to say to you, Xavier, I went there and I went on a tour guide. No, I didn't. No one paid for me to go, but there was a tour that was sponsored by BLM, or there was a tour guide who was very familiar with BLM, and the work of BLM, and they took me on a tour guide a tour of Palestine.
Too,
Surely it would at least make you think that there might be some relationship between their ideology and the way that I was toured. Is that fair?
That's a fair argument. And honestly, no one has ever explained it in that way. People always just ask me, well, who paid for the trip? And I'm just like, why does that matter? But the way you're explaining that, like, I understand that. And the thing is I would go, like, let's say, for example,
you're the wrong person for the job. How you don't know why people are asking you? Anytime something happens in America, what do we do to find the answers? We follow the money. It's clear that it matters where people spend their money. They're not taking you to Israel just because they nice and they want to show you how lovely Israel is, or the real Israel. They want you to come back with these talking points. That's where they propositioned you. That's where they checked your state of mind. That's where they planted those seeds so that you came back and you started doing exactly what they did, and they started giving you more stuff. All of his accolades come from what I mentioned in the beginning, Jewish. What's the name of that? I forget. I said it in the beginning, though. It's a paper. It's a Jewish paper.
We have different perspectives on this. If you wanted to go to Israel and show me everything that you're claiming to see, I would 100% go. I'm always open to new information. So if you have someone who would organize that trip and would want me to see what you're seeing, I would be willing to go.
I think that's dope. Let's do that, because again, that's why I say night school is not a debate space. This is an educational space. We talk, we learn, we teach, we learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's dope. So I would love to do that. When you went on these places, did you go to Hebron by any chance?
Yes.
When you went to Hebron, did you notice that like Shuhada Street shut down, or like all the cages as you walk through the market where settlers were throwing urine and bleach onto Palestinian workers, which is why they put the cages up?
I'm unfamiliar with that.
So it sounds like even when you went to Hebron, they probably kept you on a very particular part. So there's the Palestinian part, and then because it's Area C, so it's they showed you a very particular part of Hebron, which is cool. So when you went to Jerusalem, you saw a certain part of Jerusalem. When you went to Hebron, you saw.
Not saying that he don't know his alphabet, but he probably don't understand Area A versus Area B versus Area C, which is, Palestinian. Which is Jewish territory, Palestinian territory, and shared territory or unoccupied territory or something. Because I'm not even recalling it properly. Area A is Palestinian. Palestine. Let me look it up. I don't want to get it wrong, but I'm not one of the ones arguing for Israel, right? I think it all is Palestine, so I'm clearly biased. I'm not going to argue that, but let's see here. All right, here we go. A, B, and C. Here we go. All right, under the terms of the Oslo Agreement, Area A is under Palestinian administrative and police control, which I was correct. It constitutes 18% of the West Bank. Of the three areas, Area A is the most densely populated, of course, because they all get pushed into those territory. Although under Palestinian control, much of the available land for building lies on borders with Area C, right? So the Palestinian Authority exercises administrative control over Area B, but shares security control with Israel authorities, which I was wrong about that. This area makes up, I was wrong in the sense that I said it was I said it was Palestinian. It was controlled by Israeli authorities, but I didn't know it was shared with the PLA. This area makes up about 22% of the West Bank. Palestinian administrative or civil control of the area includes education, economic, and health sectors. The majority of Palestinians in the West Bank live in areas A or B. These areas are not contiguous. Area C divides Area A and B into hundreds of separate segments. What do that mean? Area C, oh, okay. Yeah, it divides them. Okay. And as they go, a picture of it right here. Area C, which Israel administers, covers over 60% of the West Bank. An estimated 300,000 Palestinians live in 532 residential areas located partially or fully in Area C. Only 532 residential areas located for 300,000 Palestinians, along with some 400,000 Israeli settlers residing in approximately 230 settlements. In addition, around 30% of the area is designated firing zone for military training. That's half of Area C. That's not half. It's 60%, 30% of the 60%. 38 Palestinian communities are located within these training areas. Wow. Although 60% of Area C is made up of these firing zones, other military land or state land and nature reserves, Palestinian residents struggle to obtain land permits. That's what I was talking about earlier with the permits for housing and farming, and the remaining 40%. Wow. So hold on, why I say around 30% of Area C is designated firing zone for military training, but then it says 60% of Area C is made up of these firing zones. So I guess the total amount of land is only 30%, but is spread out through the 60% of the land, I guess. A third of Palestinian communities in Area C lack a primary school, forcing children to travel or walk long distances to reach the nearest school. More than 70% of communities in the Area C are not connected to water network and rely on tanked tankered water at vastly increased costs. 95,000 people receive fewer than 50 liters of water per capita per day, half of the minimum amount recommended by the World Health Organization. Nearly half of Area C Palestinian communities report that their access to emergency and basic health care is hampered by the long distances to the nearest clinic or the need to pass through checkpoints. It could take them over 4 hours to travel 15 minutes if it's a checkpoint there. Don't say that. Y'all can see what it say, but I'm just recalling that from an interview I watched, a few interviews that I watched. And apart from administrative division established by the Oslo Accords, the West Bank is apportioned into 11 governorates. Learn about Anira's long history to work across Palestinian West Bank. Sorry. All right, let's get back to it.
A certain part.
I saw pretty much every part of Jerusalem each of the times I've been there. I've toured Jerusalem pretty extensively, and if anything, Jerusalem seemed like the most calm place of anywhere in Israel.
So,
And you didn't notice any checkpoints? You didn't notice any Palestinians being stopped and searched all the time?
No, I did. I would tell you.
No, I believe you.
Like, I did not. And I had conversations with so many Arab people who had no idea who I was. And I would ask them just like, what is the vibe like here? And they do not understand the narrative that Americans have, or like certain Americans on certain sides of the political aisle, however you want to describe it, that they have that over there, that they don't have rights. They love living there. Same thing with the Black Israeli, or the Black Jewish people, especially, that I spoke to over there. They are frustrated with the fact that so many people don't know that they exist, because a lot of people tried to make the Israeli-Palestinian conflict about Black versus white, and they think that that is the most bizarre thing that they've heard of.
I haven't heard much of that. But I mean,
Sorry. More propaganda. It took Israel almost 30 years to even acknowledge that there were Jewish people in what they knew, but they didn't want to give them a return or passage to come from, I believe it's Ethiopia, to, they denied them their right of passage because they were Black.
That's not to say there isn't anti-Blackness or racism in Israel. There's anti-Blackness and racism everywhere. It'd be weird for me if we say Israel doesn't have any. I mean, you saw what happened to Ethiopians when they came there.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that in that regard. I'm saying,
I'm sure he don't know what happened. That's why Mark said, I'm sure you saw, and he kept talking. No, he didn't see it.
where people were trying to make it seem like the Palestinians were all Black and trying to make it seem like all the people in
I
Israel
got
were
you.
white.
Yeah,
That was
I
what people were
heard
trying to make the narrative into online. And a lot of Black Jewish people that I spoke to out there were extremely frustrated by that narrative.
Yeah, no, I would be frustrated by. I'm frustrated by that narrative because it's just not accurate. This isn't about Black versus white. For me, it's about colonizer versus colonized. It's about imperialist versus the victims of imperialism.
Well, the Jews were there first, so I don't understand the narrative that they were the colonizers. They predated the Arabs by like 2 millennia.
So, what percentage of Palestine? And I'm not putting you on the spot. I mean, just roughly. I'm asking for like an almanac number. But at the turn of the 20th century, what percentage of Palestine was Jewish?
I don't know. Like of the Palestinian area?
Yeah, in all of that region, right?
Are you saying Palestine like as in Israel, or are you saying just like the
Israel didn't
Palestinian
exist yet.
territories?
Israel didn't exist yet.
Can
You
you
get what I'm saying?
repeat the question one more time?
All right. At the turn of the 20th century, there was this place called Palestine, right? Not Israel yet.
So before the formation of Israel.
Yeah, Israel was formed in 1948. So let's say 48 years before that. Let's just pick it up. 48 years before that. Who was there? Were Jews there?
I mean, I don't recall off the top of my head, but I know if we're talking like historically speaking, Jews have been there, then exiled, there, then exiled. They have constantly been trying to come back to Judea. So if you're talking colonizing, wouldn't you go back to the people who were originally there and always fighting to be back there?
I'm happy to go down that road too, but I'm speaking because we want to go back 2 millennia, we can, because that raises all kinds of interesting questions about nationhood and identity and what Zionism is. I was speaking more just in the modern era. I guess what I was saying was they were in the single digits. Jews were in the single digits percentage wise. They were all Arabs there, and then over the course of these next few decades, mostly from Europe, a little bit from other places like Yemen and such, but mostly from Europe. Jewish people came over to Ottoman Palestine and then later British Palestine, British Mandate of Palestine. They came slowly but surely. By 1948, there were a large number of people there, right? But Palestinians lost their land. Palestinians lost their homes. Let me make it even more simple. 750,000 Palestinians were kicked out of what is now Israel. You agree with that?
Majority of them left by choice is my understanding.
Where are you getting that understanding from?
Just the research I've done. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be a historian. You got the wrong person on here if you want a historian. Call Ben Shapiro for all that. But as far as
Shapiro's not a historian either. He plays one on TV. He's a lawyer. But
okay, ate him up. You didn't have to do him like that.
I had to.
Look, as far as
Ben Shapiro,
like, I'm not going to pretend and sit here and act like I know every single percentage of every single thing. I have read extensively. I do my best to try to be objective. I do my best to try to read what both sides of the aisle are having to say. And there were. And I'm not going to also, let me be clear, like the formation of Israel wasn't a clean operation either. There's no nation that forms that is a clean operation. So what I'm not about to do is sit here and defend things or argue about things that happened decades before I was born. Again, my focus and my content, if you look closely at the content that I make about Israel, it is about what is happening now. It is about what's been happening in the last couple of years. I'm not about to argue about what happened a century ago. That wasn't my business.
I don't want you to. I guess what I want you to do is think about the relationship of why people are fighting now to what they're fighting for based on what happened before. So if you begin from the place of saying Israel is rightfully the property of Jewish people only, and that Israel is rightfully organized the way it's supposed to be as a Jewish state, and that the Arabs who left on their own and all this stuff, then yeah, it would make Palestinian resistance right now look like terrorism to you. That would make sense. Would you? So what I'm trying to do,
Objectively, it is terrorism. I mean, you look
Hold
at what
up, let
happened
me
on
go
October
back. I
7th. You
missed
look at what happened on many incidents before that. I think there's like 40 different instances. October 7th.
makes sense. Stuff supposed to be as a Jewish Israel is rightfully the property of Jewish people only, and is rightfully the property of Jewish people only, and that Israel is rightfully organized the way it's supposed to be as a Jewish state, and that the Arabs who left on their own and all this stuff, then yeah, it would make Palestinian resistance right now look like terrorism to you. That would make sense. Would you? So
he giving him an out right now, but I guarantee you he's not going to take it. He's saying that basically, if you believe X, right, and then he framing his belief into X, right. So he's saying if you believe these things, and he pulling out all the things that he already have gathered from this conversation that he believes. He's saying then that would make sense, right? He giving him an out. He's saying, I hear you, bro. I understand where you at right now. Consider this.
But what I'm trying to do,
Objectively, it is terrorism. I mean, you look at what happened October 7th. You look at what happened on many incidents before that. I think there's like 40 different instances of terrorism that happened. Like, you don't just go in and blow up a building or go and stab random people and act like that's not terrorism. Like,
yeah,
I
I
don't,
mean,
the whole concept of a resistance group, it's like, that to me isn't.
Hold up. So are you for that or against that? Because that's exactly what the IOF is doing. So you saying that you against it, but only if it's done by non-Israelis. That's what it's saying. That's what I'm hearing. What y'all hearing?
Resistance. You don't
what
murder
would,
and
resist-
kidnap.
what would resistance look like to you? What would proper resistance look like?
Proper
Great
resistance
question.
in their situation. I don't understand what they're resisting. They should be resisting their own government because Hamas is making their lives hell. Majority of their problems stem from Hamas.
Really?
Avoiding the question.
Yes.
So
But
before Hamas came,
knows so
were
many
things
of
okay
their-
before Hamas got
Oh,
there?
Hamas not in the West
Were
Bank.
things okay before Hamas got there?
Take them there.
I don't know.
Then how do you know the problems come from
Exactly.
Hamas?
Because the problems that they have today are definitely because of Hamas. Because when Israel left that area, they left greenhouses, they left irrigation systems, they left all these great things. Hamas went and uprooted all the pipe systems, used
No,
those to
that's
turn into the.
You're saying that Israel left all of these great things, and first, let's consider that over half of the population is under 15. You're saying that. Let's consider that over 60% of the population is women and children. Right? And you're saying that basically. Let's consider that a large portion of the population have already lost a limb or are confined to a wheelchair or have some type of major injury. You're saying that this what started out as a small rebel group, or Hamas at the time was the government in charge of everything, but they hired a bunch of 15-year-olds under the leadership of the small portion of men that they have. If we say it was an equal, all right, so if over 50% of the population is under 15, right? That means that if the rest is divided between man and woman of healthy age, that means it's 25% of able-bodied, hypothetically, but it's not, able-bodied adult men. That 25% all became Hamas and decided to dig up pipes to the infrastructure just because Israel put the stuff there, right? This is the same government that are restricted They had their calories restricted so that they can't do hard labor, right? Like the Israeli government strategically counted and limited the amount of calories that they could take so that they wouldn't be able to do a lot of this labor, right? And mind you, they still did labor. They still worked on the tunnels and all of that type of stuff. I'm not saying that they were incapable because they were clearly very capable. But you think that they, on a limited amount of calories, dug up the pipes, destroyed the greenhouses, and so that they could build these tunnels and starve. Okay.
These raggedy missiles that don't even make it across the lines and land in their own territory. They were burning down the greenhouses.
So why is Israel scared of missiles that don't reach the target? Hey, raggedy.
They're just so their focus is much more on making the lives of Jewish people hell rather than it is bettering the lives of the people who actually live in the Palestinian territories.
So this is where I would encourage you to think about this a little bit differently, and I can direct you in some places. First, to the earlier point, and again, this isn't for you, this is for the audience. Most historians agree, including the leading Israeli historians, that Palestinians were expelled. They didn't voluntarily leave. No one voluntarily leaves and then never comes back to their homes. The bulk of the 700 plus thousand, you can say 725, 750, 770, there's different numbers, but somewhere over 700,000 Palestinians were expelled in 1948. If you read even the work of Benny Morris, who's the leading Israeli historian, he definitely a friend of mine, he would definitely agree with you a whole lot more than me on what's right and what's wrong in Israel. But he would also acknowledge that transfer was part of Israel's plan. It was necessary part for Israel to be formed. Transfer is another way of saying ethnic cleansing, kicking people out. They were kicked out. Villages were burned. People were killed. When you were in Jerusalem and you were walking down those steps, I don't know if you went through the Damascus gate, but if you go through you probably went through the Jaffa gate or the New gate. That's where they tend to send sort of pro-Israel tourists, but so that they don't have to pass through as much Arab stuff. But if you go down Damascus gate, behind you is Salahuddin Street, and if you go up Salahuddin Street just a little bit and make a right, you'll see the American Colony Hotel. I'm bougie. That's where I stay sometimes when I'm there. Don't tell nobody. Right next door to the American Colony Hotel is Hind El Husseini, what was Hind El Husseini Orphanage. That was an orphanage that was created in 1948 when the villages in Israel were burned down, leaving and their parents were killed, and these 50 plus girls were rescued by Hind El Husseini from a village called Deir Yassin and taken there. So these aren't like mysteries or hypothetical things. Villages were burned down, to the ground. Records were destroyed. Books were destroyed. Family archives were destroyed. But most importantly, people's lives were destroyed and people were killed. All this happened for Israel to be created. All those people that are living in refugee camps, they're living in refugee camps because they were kicked out of Israel and aren't allowed back. If you go to Tulkarm, just to give you one example, I spent a lot of time in Tulkarm. If you go to Tulkarm refugee camp and you ask the people where are you from, even if they've been there for 60 years, they're going to say I'm from Wadi al-Hawadith. They're going to name a place in Israel that they were from that got burned down and destroyed. They're not going to say the refugee camp because that's not home. What you call Israel now is home, and they're not allowed back, and they were kicked out. So that's just a fact. And in terms of Gaza, which I think you talked about very accurately, part of it you talked about very accurately, right? Which is that Israel did.
This is places that a lot of us probably don't even know. A lot of us that are non-Palestinian and even Israelis probably don't know even the names of these places because they've never been toured it. It's been destroyed. This is something that when colonization happened, a part of that process is to get rid of the knowledge and information that's connected to the land. So, like he's saying, like they'll tell you these places that are in Greater Israel, or not Greater Israel, and Israel Major, that the names might be lost to the public, but these people live there, so they know these names. These are their homes. So it's a part of this conflict that I haven't thought about to this point.
Did leave in 2005 from inside of Israel, but Israel never let the Palestinians run Gaza. Israel controls Gaza. It borders Gaza, land, air, sea, the electromagnetic sphere, the population registry. Israel controls what goes in and what goes out, what food goes in. They literally even control the caloric intake of people in Gaza since 2005. So,
and where are you getting that information?
What'd you say?
Where are you getting that information? Because that does not seem like the case at all. I mean, they have their own separate government and political system.
They showed you what they wanted to show you. But if you did your research like you said you did, then you would have been able to find it just like he was able to find it, just like I was able to find it, just like countless other people are able to find and know this information.
This time, I mean, they elected Hamas to lead their region. So that to me doesn't make sense. How could they be gatekeeping the food and the stuff that they have over in the Palestinian area? They wanted their own little territory, and now they have it over there. So to blame Israel for their problems when their own leaders that they have elected, Hamas being basically a political party of terrorists that they elected, that's who they should be looking at and being like, why are you guys not giving us resources?
Why, if they are terrorists, why would Israel allow them to come to power, for number one, but also support them and also transfer, aid to them, designated or earmarked aid, which I hate this term of aid to them. That doesn't look good on Israel's part.
Resources. Why, when food is sent here and money is sent here, do you guys take that and not give us the resources that we're supposed to be having over here? So that narrative is just crazy. But as
Well,
far
it's
as
not a narrative. I'll send you this link privately as well. But this is just one of many arguments, articles that sort of show how the blockade and the siege of Gaza has affected the caloric intake, limits and control.
This is the Institute for Middle East Understanding, IMEU, and the title of it is "Putting Palestinians, quote unquote, on a Diet," and Israel's siege and blockade of Gaza. It was written in August 14, 2014.
Shows the caloric intake of Palestinian people, and it also shows you the impact of that on the children. For example, 10% of children under 5 stunted growth due to malnutrition. 58.6% of Gaza school children were anemic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These aren't outcomes that are unimportant. And I know you don't think they're unimportant. You would say they're very important. The question is who's responsible for them. You raised that point, and I think that's the right question to ask. I agree with you. Where we disagree is I'm looking at all the data that shows. I mean, there's one point where Israel literally wouldn't allow chocolate into Gaza. I mean, these aren't like narratives. These are facts. And I get that you're saying you haven't read those facts. And I respect that. So what I want to do is send resources, not just to you, but to the audience, so they can see that Israel is literally controlling what goes in and out of Gaza. And they always have. They also control the people who go in and out of Gaza. They literally control the border. Even on the Egyptian side, they do security coordination with the Egyptian government. So Palestinians don't have freedom. Gaza is.
But they had the opportunity for a two-state solution. I mean, at the end of the day, the nation is still Israel. So Israel is going to have more power when it comes to certain exports and who is coming into the nation and all of that, because it is still Israel.
Of another country?
Palestinian territory is not another country. I wish it was. I wish they could have a
So
two-state
you can't say
solution.
that they have a sovereign, but then you can't say they have a sovereign nation and they didn't and they ran it into the ground. Israel has control over what they do. That's the point.
They have their own territory. They have a unique situation that they have allowed to be run into the ground. They are not a separate country. I wish that they were. I wish that they did have two separate territories, but which side is not allowing that compromise to happen? I mean, there's been 5 different offers trying to make a two-state solution, and they've never agreed to that. So where I do agree with you is that Israel has more power when it comes to
what was that?
the
I'm sorry.
overall of what was that?
You said there were 5 separate offers and Israel just said no? I mean, and Palestinians just said no?
There have been so many different two-state solution offers.
What are the 5 offers? I'm just trying to understand. What are the 5 offers?
I mean, I've read about them. I know PragerU has a bunch of videos on them as well. You can find other sources. There have been many offers of a two-state solution, and every time it has been shut down. And when there's no offer, they don't make any counter offers. It's literally where the Palestinian territories just want to have all of Israel. That's why they say from the river to the sea. They want all of that nation. They don't want a two-state solution. They want one big solution, or they want one big state, and for it to be Palestine. And that's just not going to happen.
So a couple things, just historically, and again, I know you're saying you're not a historian or expert, so I'm not trying to have like a scholarly debate on this with you. I just want to point out, just more for the education of the audience, it's untrue that Palestinians have never made counter offers and negotiated over this.
I shouldn't say they've never made counter offers. I shouldn't say that. That's misspeaking. I misspoke on that. But they have not given realistic counter offers that are something that's actually feasible and able to happen. Every single time it has been shut down.
Have the Israeli offers been fair and realistic?
I mean, to my knowledge, they have been. From what I have looked at, and again, I've read all of this before, but again, I don't spend, I don't live in Israel. So I don't spend my days when I'm researching and looking deep into different things and different causes. I'm not memorizing this every single day. I didn't know that this conversation was mostly going to be about this, but I have read some aspects of like what these different solutions were and why they were shut down. And basically what it boils down to in the most layman's terms possible is that the Palestinian territory, they want all of Israel to be Palestine. And then that's just not going to happen. Yes.
So, and then I want to ask you about something different outside of this. I just want to put a button on this part. This is so fascinating. First, Israel has never offered Palestinians
anything substantial,
a contiguous, secure, autonomous state. They just haven't, right? They've offered peace over here, peace over here. No water it could run through, no security could run through. It's been very intentionally divided so that they can't have a contiguous, single, autonomous sovereign state.
Right. When that's
Israeli offers have
is, Israel wants to offer them territories, but he wants to keep them separated. So he wants to keep the Palestinians disunited, so that you have a part over here, a part over there, and a part over there. You know what I'm saying? However many parts there might be, but they have no ability to be interconnected. That's one of the major issues.
Have been unfair. I mean, some of those five. This number 5 is an interesting one, and I know Prager talks about that on the website and on the videos. But I would argue that if to get to 5, you have to be going all the way back to like 1937, what we call the Peel Partition, or the 1947 UN Partition. But Israel's taken far more of that than that. Even if I would agree that they should have taken those deals, which I'm not saying they should. That ain't my business. Like you say, that ain't my business. That's between Palestinians and Israelis who takes what. But I would disagree on that piece of it. I would also I would just encourage you, and I'm going to send you a bunch of stuff. I want you to at least consider that the sources that you're reading have a very particular point of view. Just like the sources I read have a very particular point of view. And I'd like you to put those two things in conversation with each other and see if it fleshes out. And like I said, I want you to go on that tour of Israel and Palestine with some different folk, and I want to see what you see.
Let's go.
And I'll and I'll take you some cool places too. You know what I mean? I'm old, but I know some spots. So maybe you have you out in Ramallah kicking it. You know what I'm saying? You may have a good time out there. But I agree with you finally that it's not. While the history matters, it's important right now to think about what justice could look like and what peace should look like. People are dying every day. Tens of thousands of Palestinians are dying. Over 100 probably have died. 50 have definitely died. And whatever someone thinks about October 7th, and I think you and I might actually, that's a different conversation for us to have. But to me, it's when is enough enough? Right? Even if I accepted your narrative that everything Israel did on October 7th or October 8th was right, it's now December 12th of a whole nother year. It's been 14 months. Do you agree with Israel continuing to bomb and attack Gaza?
I want to know why they haven't returned the hostages. I mean, for me, it's really as simple as why is Hamas still around and why have they not returned the hostages? There are still so many hostages that are that are entrapped by Hamas. I mean, they could end this by returning the hostages and by disbanding Hamas. Otherwise, this war is going to continue. I don't like to see people dying and getting bombed and all the ugliness that comes with war.
You think it's fair?
I don't think war is fair. War is never fair. And I also don't think that proportionate response is fair. Or I don't think proportionate response is something that is even reasonable. When you go into war, you go into war. So until they return the hostages and until Hamas...
Wait, you think disproportionate force is okay?
I think it's necessary in war.
So you don't care about international law?
I'm not taking it there. No.
International law says it has to be proportionate and indiscriminate.
Right.
Exactly. They are still in. So what do you want Israel to do? Do you want Israel to just
be proportionate and discriminate?
And what does that look like when they're still hostages?
I don't think hostages have anything to do with
and discriminate.
If
and you don't pick a fight with a country that you don't pick a fight with a military that is that much bigger than you and refuse to give your hostages or give the hostages back and expect them to be like, what do you want them to do? Like, what is it that you realistically want them to do?
I want them to follow international law.
Hamas didn't follow international law on October 7th.
So you're saying if one person violates international law, you have the right to violate it too?
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying they need to do what they have to do to get those hostages home.
So even if it means violating international law?
I'm saying they need to get the hostages home.
Right. And right now they're saying they're getting the hostages home through efforts that violate international law. Do you agree with that method?
As the most moral army
honestly,
in the world?
They're just lucky it's not me because I would have pushed a bigger red button than the ones that they have pushed. If it came to my people when it comes to bringing home the hostages, they are at war. They are doing what happens in war. It's very unfortunate. It's very tragic. I'm not an international lawyer, so I'm not
talking about the law.
These people, they take on the worst characteristics of black women, right? And that's they claim to flame. You know what I'm saying? That's why a lot of people, especially in our community, I don't believe in the word homophobia, but things that are considered homophobia, like they always say that the black community is rampant with it, and it's because of this. Like, rarely do you find dudes that act like me, the everyday dude or man, but just happen to like same sex. You know what I'm saying? It's always these exaggerated personalities, the flamboyant, the extra. You know what I'm saying? And these things, like, it would be like for black men to be okay with that. It wouldn't be so much contention between a black man and a black woman. You know what I'm saying? If we was okay with all that loud, flamboyant, you know what I'm saying, we would be okay with our women being ratchet and loose and you know all of these characteristics. It doesn't mesh with our personalities. You know what I'm saying? It's very abrasive and offensive to us. And men have the men have a disposition that tends to suppress those things. You know what I'm saying? And it's not to target a particular community. This is what we do to each other. You know what I'm saying? It's like you look at a wolf pack. You start stepping out of line and getting too extra, then the alpha is going to keep you in check. And I'm not saying that it's alphas and betas and all of that stuff amongst men, but what I'm saying is that it's very much a community of dog eat dog, and it's like if you're going to be in my close circle, I have to be sure that you are fit to protect the circle, and as a part of that is usually applying pressure to each other, and to a point where sometimes if it is a fallout, it's usually a fight, and men can easily fight and make up. Traditionally, from a conservative perspective. Now, the young people like to do guns, but they're not men. You know what I'm saying? They little kids, they little boys. You know what I'm saying? They're little boys that don't have men as a good role model. So they act out and they act like this. They take on the worst personalities of black women, and they just happen to not be attracted to the same sex. But it's still just as damaging, because now you want to go out and destroy other black men, and your agenda end up aligning with people like this.
All right, I'm talking about what's ethical. Do you think it's ethical to bomb a hospital with babies in it?
It's not something that they want to do. I mean, Israel is known for having one of the
It's not something they want to do, but they did it to every hospital.
most ethical militaries that's like in the world. They tried their best to not
No, by
kill
who?
civilians. But I mean, the amount of people who have died.
No other military has bombed hospitals, mosques, churches, children, women, elderly, sick, wheelchair. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, man. Tents. Like, how you bomb people in a tent with a bunker breaker? You know what I'm saying? Or like your most powerful explosives, that something that you drop on buildings. You drop this on a refugee camp while people in tents. Like, it's just despicable.
From the IDF, because they're sending people in to try to mitigate having to send all these bombs and things over there. But Hamas, you can't deny the fact that Hamas is constantly putting their bases in places that are surrounded by civilians.
You have any
And
proof
then
of that?
Where
what was that?
exactly?
Where's the proof of that?
There's so much. There's so many
Show it.
videos. It's well documented. I mean, that's just something that's well documented.
The one skill that's holding.
If that's well documented, I will start. I would take this off, put on a blue and white flag, and start yelling whatever the opposite of what I'm yelling right now. Let me. These commercials is killing me. My bad, y'all. This a long one. I didn't realize it was this long, man. I thought I sped it up and it'd be fine, but clearly it's still a lot of time left. This joint is an hour and some change. I might have to end this and just come back to it. This is too long. I might just rock out until my camera die. Actually, I can't even see my time. What's my time like? I think I'm at the hour mark, but oh, there we go. Hour and 38 minutes. I got to end this. I'm gonna end this. I'm gonna probably do a second one, inshallah. I'm gonna go a little bit more. I'm gonna let him make this point.
But it's often stated, but it's never been proven.
I mean, I've seen plenty of videos.
You've seen plenty of videos saying that.
No, I've seen plenty of videos of like schools and hospitals and everything where they show like what is actually underneath. I've seen
I
videos
ain't seen
where
one yet. So send
I've
that
seen
over to me.
many.
Like I said, this is a learning process, so you can teach me something. Send that over to me. I'd love to see that. And I'm happy to
You
stand
know
down on
what,
that
don't
100%. But
exist.
I've looked at reports, I've looked at videos.
Yeah, I'll send you some.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess for me, it's just hard to see schools blown up, hospitals blown up, women and children killed who are obviously, not combatants. I can't see, for example, justifying. I mean, you know, watching a hospital bombed with babies inside of it on incubators is wild to me. Watching humanitarian aid be blocked. Israel's literally blocking. Even the U.S., which, as you know, Democrat and Republican stands with Israel. They're like, "Yo, you got 30 days to stop blocking food access." And then after the 30 days, when they say, we'll give you another 30." But it's very clear Israel is not letting Palestinians get food. That they're not letting Palestinians get medicine. I mean, for me, it's heartbreaking.
But
that-
this could have been
And
over.
this is my whole thing, right? They use Hamas as, oh yeah, my camera died, and it coded error. While recording. Hopefully y'all can still hear me. Let me see. Yeah, the time's still rolling. I think my computer died. I mean, my camera died. But my point I was gonna make is, a lot of times when these debates are had or these conversations are had, nobody's pointing out, which is obvious. It's so obvious that a lot of times it get overlooked. But this war is not a war. It's not Israel versus Hamas. This war is being taken out on civilians. That's why the data is so important. The evidence is so important, because you keep trying to justify, we targeting Hamas, even though it's so untargeted that overwhelmingly civilians are getting killed. But you would think that we would be pushing like, you saying that you killed 600 people to get one person? Like, no, that's crazy. At least prove to me that one person was in there. We haven't done that. That's very problematic. And the fact that he's justifying this shows that his decision is made, and that is no red line. He's saying he would have pressed the red button. But if I was to say something like, because of his lifestyle, I would do something to him, I would get canceled. That's crazy.
Hamas wanted it to be over. It's like Hamas wants to see the perish of their own people, because if they return the hostages and they stopped being terrorists, this would be over. This shouldn't have started, let alone gone on this long. What we do agree on is that this shouldn't be going on as long as it is.
For
But
sure. I was gonna say, just to be clear, Hamas did agree to a plan to return the hostages, and a ceasefire. Joe Biden also said, "Hey, here's a plan." It's Netanyahu who rejected it.
that's a whole nother conversation when it comes to Netanyahu.
Yeah,
What?
he's the problem to me. Let me ask you one last question, not on Israel.
I'm at the end here, man. This is already an hour and 40 minutes. So, I'm gonna do another one to this when I get some more time. But until then, let me know what y'all think about this content. Am I taking too much time to go on my tangents and make my comments? So, what can I do to improve the channel? What type of content should I focus on? Like, subscribe, give me some pointers. Appreciate anybody watching this. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to the Muslims, and to everybody else. Peace.
Palestine.